People say you understand the value of life only when you stand close enough to death to hear it breathing down your neck. I can confirm that's true. My name's Bob. The hospice nurses call me the funniest patient they've ever had. I take it as a compliment, though I know it's half pity. You see, I've spent my entire life making other people laugh, and I'm not going to stop now, not even one step before the grave. I asked my family and friends for just one thing when the time comes: don't cry at my funeral. Watch the funny videos I've been making for years instead. Laugh so hard that I can hear it wherever I end up. That's the legacy I want to leave behind: laughter, not tears. But if you'd seen me 20 years ago, you'd probably never guess that this old man in a hospital bed was once the king of pranks, a millionaire troublemaker who knew exactly how to turn life into a show. Back then, my best friend Mark and I ran a small but thriving music studio. We were the same age but completely different people. Mark lived for whiskey and women. I lived for trolling the world around me. I'd pull up to luxury hotels in my sleek black Mercedes just to watch how the gold diggers circled me like sharks. Without fail, they'd smile, flip their hair, lean closer, and wait for me to make a move. And I always did, just not the move they expected. "Can I have your number?" I'd ask. The answer was always no, until they saw me unlock the Mercedes and slip behind the wheel. That's when the same women would suddenly knock on the tinted window, sliding their business cards through the crack like flyers for salvation. I used to drive off laughing so hard I'd have tears in my eyes. That was me back then, a man who loved watching the world expose its own hypocrisy. I didn't stop there. Sometimes I'd dress like a homeless man, sit outside busy cafes, and ask strangers if they could spare a few dollars for a burger. You'd think the Christmas spirit would warm people's hearts, but I learned something very few people dare to admit: kindness is rare. One person out of 100 would stop, buy me food, maybe even sit with me. And when they did, I gave them a gift they'd never forget: a brand new iPhone. No one ever saw it coming. Their faces, those moments were priceless. But among all the encounters in my little social experiments, one day stands out above all the rest. It was cold, windy, and I was dressed in my beggar outfit: torn jacket, dirty jeans, hair deliberately messed up. I sat outside a coffee shop, pretending to shiver. Dozens of people walked by, pretending not to see me. Then a young woman appeared. Early 30s, maybe younger. No wedding ring. She was with two friends who wrinkled their noses at me and hurried past. But she didn't. She stopped. "Hey," she said softly. "Do you want more than just a burger? Are you warm enough?" Before I could respond, she disappeared inside and came back with a tray, a steaming cup of coffee, a sandwich, a muffin, even an extra blanket. My chest tightened. She had no idea I wasn't who I appeared to be. I tried to hand her the iPhone. She frowned and shook her head. "I didn't do this for a reward," she said. "Give it to someone who actually needs it." I asked for her number, expecting her to hesitate. She didn't. She dictated it, like she didn't care who I was or what I had. That night I texted her. And that's how our story began. At first, I told myself the age difference made it impossible. "She could be your daughter," I whispered to myself at night. But she kept writing back. Always the first to ask how my day went. Always the one to remind me there's more good in the world than I'd ever believed. She volunteered at a church center, delivering hot meals in winter, helping the poor, sorting warm clothes for those with nothing. She wasn't interested in my money. She was interested in me, or at least, the version of me I didn't let the world see often. I invited her to dinner one evening. She insisted on paying for herself. When I dropped her off at her tiny apartment later that night, she invited me in, not for what you're thinking, but to show me something. On her bedroom ceiling, she had stuck hundreds of tiny glow-in-the-dark stars. She turned off the lights, and suddenly the whole room lit up like the Milky Way. "It helps me dream," she whispered. I didn't realize it then, but that night was the start of everything. For the first time in my life, someone wasn't laughing at me or my jokes. She was looking straight at me, past the car, the studio, the money, the pranks. Straight into the part of me I'd hidden for so long I'd forgotten it existed. And that terrified me more than death ever could. You'd think falling in love at 60 would feel strange. But with Emily it felt inevitable. We started small, daily texts, late-night calls, coffee runs when she was free from volunteering at the church center. Her voice had this warmth that made me forget how empty my penthouse felt. I'd spent decades filling my life with expensive things, but I'd never once bought silence, and that's what I craved most. With her, silence wasn't awkward. It was comforting, like two souls breathing in sync. One day she said, "You know, Bob, you're always testing people. Pretending to be poor, setting up pranks. When are you going to test me?" I smiled. "Careful what you wish for." That's how our first big prank together was born. We staged a forgotten wallet scene at a diner. I ordered a ridiculous feast, steaks, lobster, dessert, the whole 9 yards. At the end, I made a big show of patting my pockets and whispering to her loud enough for the waiter to hear. "I forgot my wallet." Emily instantly played along. "Well," she sighed dramatically, "I guess we'll have to wash dishes together." The waiter's jaw dropped when she rolled up her sleeves and walked straight to the kitchen. People were staring, whispering. And just when the manager came storming out, ready to call the cops, I dropped a platinum card on the table and shouted, "Relax! Dinner's on me!" The entire diner erupted in laughter. Even the waiter cracked a smile. Emily nudged me on the way out. "You live for this, don't you?" I grinned. "No, sweetheart. I live for us making people smile." From then on, we became a team. We filmed social experiments, posted them on my YouTube channel. One week we dressed up like eccentric millionaires and offered strangers money if they could make us laugh in under 30 seconds. Another time, we walked into a high-end boutique dressed in rags, and filmed the way staff treated us before and after I casually pulled out a black Amex card. People loved it. The videos exploded. Hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments. But what viewers didn't see was how Emily changed me off camera. For the first time, I stopped chasing empty thrills. Her kindness, it was contagious. She gave food to the homeless without filming it, spent nights writing anonymous checks to struggling families, slipped money into strangers' shopping carts at Christmas. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was no longer playing a role. I wasn't Bob the millionaire, or Bob the prankster. I was just a man who loved a woman who reminded him life was more than money, more than laughs, more than winning games. That's when everything started to unravel. I still remember the night I told her. We were lying on the floor of her tiny apartment, staring up at her ceiling full of stars. "They gave me a year," I whispered. She turned her head slowly. "What?" "My doctor. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. A year, maybe less." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I waited for her to pull away, to leave, to shut the door like everyone else would have. But instead she slid closer, put her head on my chest, and whispered, "Then we'll make this year count. Every second." That's the thing about Emily. She didn't flinch in the face of darkness. From that day on, our pranks became different. Deeper. Less about mocking people and more about revealing them. One of my favorites was when we sat on a park bench dressed as two old, homeless strangers. We had hidden cameras rolling. People passed us by like we didn't exist, except for a little boy, maybe 7 years old, who walked up and handed Emily half his sandwich without saying a word. Emily hugged him, tears in her eyes. We found his mother later, gave her enough money to pay off their debts, and promised the boy a college scholarship in my name. We didn't post that video. Some things weren't meant for the world to see. One night, after shooting, we walked back to her place. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that carries whispers you can't quite understand. Emily stopped under a flickering streetlight and looked at me with those ocean-colored eyes. "Bob," she said softly, "what if you beat this? What if you live?" I smiled faintly. And what if I don't? She grabbed my hands. Then I'll make sure you're never forgotten. I'll make sure everyone knows the real you, not the millionaire, not the prankster, but the man who made me believe in love again. I didn't have an answer. I just kissed her under that broken light and wished for the first time in my life that money could buy time. But here's the thing, I had secrets Emily didn't know yet. Secrets that could destroy the very trust we'd built. And deep down, I knew I couldn't hide them forever. I used to think the worst thing about dying was dying. Turns out I was wrong. The worst thing is watching someone you love prepare to live without you. Every time Emily smiled, every time she made plans for next summer, or after your treatment, it felt like someone was tightening a rope around my chest. I didn't have the heart to tell her that I'd already stopped the chemotherapy. The doctors were clear, another round would buy me, at best, an extra 2 months, and at what cost? I wanted to live the time I had left. Not survive it. But there was something else. Something darker. Before Emily, I wasn't the man she thought I was. Sure, I had money, a business, and a reputation as a harmless prankster, but behind that, there were choices I wasn't proud of. People I'd hurt. And there was one name in particular that haunted me. The trouble started on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting in the studio office, editing our next YouTube video, when Emily walked in holding a thin manila envelope. Her hands were trembling. "Bob," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" My heart stopped. "Tell you what?" She set the envelope on the desk. Inside were bank statements, large monthly transfers to a private account. Emily's name wasn't on them. "I thought you said you didn't have family," she said softly. I swallowed hard. "I don't." "Then who is M.L.?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. She stormed out before I could explain. I sat there staring at the glowing computer screen, the cursor blinking like a ticking bomb. The truth was complicated, messier than anything I'd ever confessed. Years ago, before Emily, I'd been engaged. Her name was Margaret Lane. She was beautiful, reckless, and addicted to chaos. I loved her anyway. But I caught her cheating. Left her without a word. Months later, she sent me a single letter. She was pregnant. I didn't believe her at first. Then came another letter with a sonogram. I sent money quietly, every month, but never reached out. Guilt became routine. And now Emily knew. That night I called her. No answer. I texted her. Nothing. By morning, she still hadn't come home. Panic clawed at me until I finally tracked her down at the church center where she volunteered. She was sorting coats for the homeless, her back turned. I walked up behind her, whispered, "Emily." She froze but didn't turn around. "You should have told me," she said coldly. "All this time, you said you didn't want children. And now I find out you already have one?" "I don't have a child," I said quickly. I have a stranger out there who shares my DNA, and I've spent 20 years being too much of a coward to meet them." That made her pause. Slowly she faced me. "Then why now?" she asked. "Why did you store, your material in the bank? Why ask me for a child if you couldn't face the one you might already have?" I didn't have an answer she'd accept. The truth was, I wanted us to create something together. I wanted a piece of her to live on after I was gone. But saying that out loud felt selfish. For a week, we barely spoke. I thought it was the end. But then, one rainy evening, she came to my apartment, dripping wet, eyes red from crying. "I don't care about your past," she whispered. "I care about us. I need to know one thing, Bob. Do you love me?" I didn't hesitate. "More than life." She kissed me then, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. We threw ourselves back into filming, pretending everything was normal. But something had changed. Emily started disappearing for hours, sometimes whole days, claiming she was volunteering. Her phone buzzed late at night with messages she never showed me. When I asked, she brushed it off. Then one night, while she was asleep on the couch, her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. I found him. Call me. I didn't recognize the number, but my stomach turned cold. Who had she found? I waited until morning, pretending to be asleep when she woke up and slipped out of the apartment. Then I followed her. She drove across town to a rundown diner on the edge of the city. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw her sit across from a young man. Maybe 20, maybe younger. Dark hair. Nervous energy. He looked exactly like me at that age. I stumbled back to my car, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I'd pass out right there. I had no doubt who he was. My son. And Emily, she'd found him before I did. This was the beginning of the unraveling. But what I didn't know then was that this boy wasn't just my blood. He carried a secret of his own, one that would change everything I thought I knew about love, family, and the life I had left. I sat in my car across the street, watching through the fogged-up windshield as Emily leaned toward him, the young man who looked so much like me it hurt to breathe. I didn't remember driving home. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the door. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, drowning in a storm of thoughts I couldn't control. Why hadn't she told me? Why meet him behind my back? What did he know about me? By morning I knew I couldn't hide from it anymore. 2 days later, Emily came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee in front of me. Bob, she started softly. I was going to. Tell me. I interrupted. My voice was hoarse, my chest tight. Tell me everything. She hesitated for a long moment, then sat across from me, her hands folded neatly like a schoolgirl preparing to confess a crime. I met him by accident, she said. I was looking into your old bank transfers. I had to know who you'd been helping all these years. I found Margaret. Her name hit me like a slap. I hadn't heard it spoken out loud in over 2 decades. She told me about him. Emily continued. His name's Ethan. He didn't even know who you were until I showed up. I clenched my jaw. And you thought it was your place to, what? Introduce yourself? Fix what I broke. Tears welled up in her eyes, but her voice stayed steady. I thought it was my place to help you, she said. Because you're running out of time, Bob. And because one day, when you're gone, I don't want him to wonder why his father never wanted him. Her words cut deeper than any diagnosis ever could. That evening I agreed to meet Ethan. We sat in a quiet cafe, the 3 of us. I couldn't stop staring at him, the sharp jawline, the restless energy, the way he drummed his fingers on the table exactly the way I used to when I was nervous. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at me at first. Finally, he said, You had 20 years to find me. I know, I whispered. And I'm sorry. Sorry? His voice cracked. Do you know how many birthdays I wished you'd show up? How many times I asked Mom why you didn't want me? Emily reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I wasn't ready to be a father, I said finally. I thought sending money was enough. I was wrong. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't walk out. That was something. Over the next few weeks, we met a few more times. Slowly, painfully, we started talking. He told me about his job at a small auto shop, how he loved rebuilding engines. I told him about the studio, the pranks, the channel. For a while, it felt like maybe we had a chance. Then came the night everything shattered. I was in my studio late, editing a new video, when Ethan stormed in. His face was pale, his hands shaking. You lied to me, he said flatly. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? He threw a crumpled piece of paper on the desk. It was a medical report, his medical report. You knew, didn't you? He spat. You knew I could get sick. Just like you. I grabbed the paper, scanning the words. It wasn't cancer. It was worse in some ways, a rare genetic heart condition. Life-threatening. Untreated, He wouldn't live past 35. I shook my head. Ethan, I swear I didn't know. Don't, he snapped. Don't act like you didn't abandon me once already. You don't get to play savior now. Before I could explain, he was gone. Emily came in minutes later, out of breath, panic in her eyes. You should have told him, she whispered. I didn't know, I said again, almost pleading. She stared at me for a long, heavy moment, and then said something I didn't expect. Bob, what if this isn't just about him? I frowned. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. What if our baby inherits this too? The words hit me like a freight train. I hadn't even considered it. All this time, I'd been dreaming of leaving a piece of myself behind. A son. A daughter. Someone to carry my laugh, my stubbornness, my love for life. But what if I was leaving behind something else? Something broken. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt truly terrified. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the nursery we'd started to prepare, staring at the tiny crib by the window. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if bringing a child into this world had been a mistake. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Because the next day, Emily disappeared. No note. No call. Nothing. And when I finally found her, days later, she wasn't alone. She was sitting in the same diner where she'd first met Ethan, across from Margaret. And Margaret was smiling. I stood frozen at the entrance of the diner, watching through the rain-streaked glass as Emily leaned toward Margaret, the woman I'd once loved and left behind 2 decades ago. Margaret looked exactly as I remembered, only sharper, colder. Her smile wasn't warm, it was calculated. The kind of smile that says, I've been waiting for this moment. Emily spotted me first. Her lips parted, but she didn't call my name. Margaret, on the other hand, turned slowly, her gaze locking on mine with the kind of familiarity that sends a shiver down your spine. Bob, she said, as if tasting the name. Finally. I stepped inside, rain dripping off my coat. My voice came out rough. What are you doing here? Margaret leaned back casually, like she owned the place. Same thing I've been doing for 20 years, she said softly. Taking care of what you abandoned. Emily stood between us like a referee. Bob, she whispered. Sit down. Please. I did. Slowly. My eyes never left Margaret. I've been helping Ethan, she said. Medical bills, college, everything. Do you have any idea how expensive it's been? I clenched my fists under the table. I sent money every month. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Money, yes. But not you. He needed a father, Bob. Not a stranger's checks. Emily reached across the table, placing her hand over mine, grounding me. Margaret didn't come here to fight, she said quietly. Margaret tilted her head. No. I came here because Ethan's sick, Bob. And whether you like it or not, you're his only chance. The room spun. What do you mean? I asked, barely managing the words. Margaret slid a folder across the table. Inside were hospital reports, genetic analyses, donor compatibility charts. Ethan needs a heart transplant, she said simply. And there's a high chance you're the only viable match. I sat there staring at the papers, my throat tight, my chest burning. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to push it all away. But the truth was there in black and white. Emily squeezed my hand. Bob, she whispered. You can save him. I can't, I said, my voice cracking. I don't have time, Emily. The cancer. Margaret's gaze was merciless. You have months. He has weeks. I stumbled out of the diner without another word. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I barely felt it. My mind was spiraling. How do you choose between your own life and the son you've never known? That night, Emily found me in the nursery, sitting on the floor next to the tiny crib we'd bought together. She knelt beside me, her hand resting gently on my cheek. You're scared, she said softly. I laughed bitterly. Scared doesn't cover it. You don't have to decide tonight, she whispered. But she was wrong. Every minute counted. 2 days later, I met Ethan in the hospital. He looked pale, thinner than before, dark circles under his eyes. You're not a match, are you? He asked flatly. I am, I admitted. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. Then don't. What? Don't, he repeated. You've got cancer, Bob. You've got months. Why would you waste what's left on me? Because you're my son, I whispered. He laughed bitterly, the same way I used to when life disappointed me. You're 20 years late for that speech. Later that night, Emily came home with swollen eyes. You went to see him? She asked. I nodded. What did he say? I hesitated. He told me not to do it. Emily stared at me, and then, softly, she said something that broke me. I'm pregnant with your child, Bob. Do it for them. Do it so our baby doesn't grow up wondering why their father didn't save their brother when he had the chance. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, it wasn't just my life anymore. It wasn't just Ethan's. It was all tangled together, past, present, and future, bound by blood and choices too heavy to carry. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I signed the consent forms. The surgery would take place in 10 days. But then, 3 days before the operation, everything imploded. I came home to find Emily sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. What happened? I asked. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Bob, she whispered, Margaret's gone. Gone? She emptied Ethan's medical fund. She vanished. No calls, no trace, nothing. And just like that, everything shifted again. Because if Margaret disappeared, who was paying for Ethan's surgery? I didn't have the answer. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Margaret wasn't finished with us. 3 days after Margaret vanished, the hospital called. Ethan's condition had worsened. He didn't have weeks anymore. He had days. Emily and I rushed to the hospital. The sterile hallways smelled like antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped steadily, mocking me with their indifference. Ethan was pale, almost translucent, his lips cracked and dry. Dad, he whispered when he saw me. The word hit me like a knife. He never called me that before. I'm here, I said, gripping his cold hand. I'm not going anywhere. But deep down, I knew I was lying. The doctors were clear. Without a transplant, Ethan wouldn't survive the week. But with Margaret gone and the medical fund drained, there was no way to cover the surgery. That night, while Emily slept in the chair beside me, I walked down to the hospital's financial office. I'll sell everything, I told them. The house, the studio, the cars, take it all. Just save him. The woman behind the desk shook her head gently. Mr. Carter, even with that, there's still not enough time. Finding a donor, prepping for surgery, it could take weeks. Weeks he doesn't have. I clenched my fists, desperate. Then take me. Use my heart. She froze. Sir, with your cancer. Take it. I shouted, my voice cracking. I want my son to live. The next morning, I signed the release papers. But I didn't tell Emily. 2 nights before the operation, I sat alone in the nursery, staring at the ultrasound photo taped to the crib. Our child. My second chance. A piece of me that hadn't even breathed yet. I whispered to the empty room. I'm sorry. I thought I was ready. But fate wasn't done with me yet. The night before the surgery, Emily woke me up in the hospital room, her face pale, eyes wide. Bob, she whispered, you need to see this. She held out her phone. On the screen was a notification, a new email. The subject line: You don't know the truth about Ethan. Inside was a single attachment. A DNA test. I opened it, and the world tilted. Ethan wasn't my son. I stared at the screen, numb. The test was recent, dated just a week ago. Margaret had known. She'd taken my money for 20 years. She'd lied. And now she disappeared. I stumbled into the hallway, my chest tight, struggling to breathe. Emily followed me, her hand on my arm. "Bob," she said gently, "you don't have to do this. Not anymore." I looked at her, tears burning my eyes. "I have to," I whispered. "Blood or not, he's still a kid who needs saving. And if I walk away now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have done something." The next morning, I signed the final papers. And then, something I never expected happened. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, Ethan appeared in the hallway, pale and weak but somehow standing. "Don't," he rasped. "Bob, don't do this." I shook my head. "I have to." He grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me." I smiled faintly. "Exactly. And that's why I want you to have a chance to live, so you can figure out who you are. So you can make the mistakes I made, and maybe fix them." Tears streamed down his face. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Neither do I," I said softly. "But here we are." Then everything went dark. I woke up to sunlight. For a moment I thought I'd died. The room was quiet, warm, full of soft shadows. Emily was asleep in the chair beside my bed, holding my hand. I blinked. My chest didn't hurt. My heart was still mine. "What happened?" I croaked. Emily stirred, wiping her eyes. They found a match," she whispered. "Last night. A young man, accident victim. Ethan's in surgery now." I stared at her, trying to process it. I hadn't lost my heart. I hadn't lost my life. It felt like a miracle. Hours later, the surgeon came out, his face tired but smiling. "The transplant was a success," he said. "Ethan's stable." I sank back into the pillows, relief washing over me in waves. Emily hugged me, her tears soaking into my hospital gown. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, Margaret, standing on a beach somewhere far away, smiling at the camera. On the back, she'd written 6 words. "You saved him. You saved me." I don't know where she is now. I don't know if I'll ever see her again. But Ethan is alive. Our baby will be born in spring. And I've been given a second chance I never thought I'd have. I still don't know how much time I have left. But for the first time in my life, it finally feels like enough.
Hello, thank you for your attention. It was only 10th story from my grandma's diary. I had told you before that my grandma worked like a nurse at one of the biggest American hospices. And only after her death we found her big diary. And it includes 100 different stories about her patients. I don't like spoil, but it is difficult for me to keep it in secret. So tomorrow you will listen to new wonderful fantastic story about woman who had 3 daughters but left her big expensive house for animal shelter. Subscribe this channel and wait for new fantastic story from Hospice Nurse Diaries.